7:56 p.m. on March 20th, 2023. I am recommencing my reading of V.I. Lenin, The State and Revolution, page 60, section 4, Organization of the Unity of the Nation. Quote, in a rough sketch of national organization which the Commune had no time to develop, it states clearly that the Commune was to be the political form of even the smallest country hamlet. End quote. The communes were to elect the national delegation in Paris. Quote, the few but important functions which still would remain for a central government were not to be suppressed, as has been intentionally misstated, but were to be discharged by communal and therefore strictly responsible agents. The unity of the nation was not to be broken, but, on the contrary, to be organized by the communal constitution, and to become a reality by the destruction of the state power, which claimed to be the embodiment of that unity independent of and superior to the nation itself, from which it was but a parasitic excrescence. While the merely repressive organs of the old governmental power were to be amputated, its legitimate functions were to be wrested from an authority usurping preeminence over society itself and restored to the responsible agents of society. End quote. To what extent the opportunists of present-day social democracy have failed to understand, or perhaps it would be more true to say did not want to understand, these observations of Marx is best shown by that book of Herostratian fame of the renegade Bernstein, The Premises of Socialism and the Tasks of Social Democracy. It is precisely in connection with the above passage from Marx that Bernstein wrote that this program, quote, in its political content displays in all its essential features the greatest similarity to the federalism of Proudhon. In spite of all the other points of difference between Marx and the petty bourgeois Proudhon, Bernstein places the words petty bourgeois in quotation marks in order to make it sound ironical. On these points, their lines of reasoning run as close as could be, end quote. Of course, Bernstein continues, the importance of the municipalities is growing, but, quote, it seems doubtful to me whether the first task of democracy would be such a dissolution, Auflösung, of the modern states and such a complete transformation, Umwandlung, of their organization as is visualized by Marx and Proudhon. The formation of the National Assembly from delegates of the provincial or district assemblies, which in their turn would consist of delegates from the communes, so that the whole previous mode of national representation would vanish completely. Bernstein, Premises, German edition, 1899, pages 134 and 136. End quote. To confuse Marx's views on the destruction of the state power, the parasitic excrescence, which Proudhon's federalism is positively monstrous, but it is no accident, for it never occurs to the opportunist that Marx does not speak here at all about federalism as opposed to centralism, but about smashing the old bourgeois state machine which exists in all bourgeois countries. The only thing that penetrates the opportunist's mind is what he sees around him in a society of petty bourgeois philistinism and reformist stagnation, namely only municipalities. The opportunist has even forgotten how to think about proletarian revolution. It is ridiculous. But the remarkable thing is that nobody argued with Bernstein on this point. Bernstein has been refuted by many, especially by Plekhanov in Russian literature and by Kautsky in European literature, but neither of them said anything about this distortion of Marx by Bernstein. To such an extent has the opportunist forgotten how to think in a revolutionary way and to ponder over a revolution that he attributes federalism to Marx and confuses him with the founder of anarchism, Proudhon. And Kautsky and Plekhanov, who claim to be orthodox Marxists and defenders of the doctrine of revolutionary Marxism, are silent on this point. Herein lies one of the roots of the extreme vulgarization of the views concerning the difference between Marxism and anarchism, which is characteristic of the Kautskyites and of the opportunists, and which we shall yet discuss later. Marx's above-quoted observations on the experience of the Commune contain not a trace of federalism. Marx agreed with Proudhon on the very point that the opportunist Bernstein failed to see. Marx disagreed with Proudhon on the very point on which Bernstein found a similarity between them. Marx agreed with Proudhon in that they both stood for the smashing of the present state machine. The similarity of views on this point between Marxism and anarchism, both Proudhon and Bakunin, neither the opportunists nor the Kautskyites wish to see, because on this point they have departed from Marxism. Marx disagreed both with Proudhon and with Bakunin precisely on the question of federalism, not to mention the dictatorship of the proletariat. Federalism as a principle follows logically from the petty bourgeois views of anarchism. Marx was a centralist. There is no departure whatever from centralism in his observations just quoted. Only those who are imbued with the Philistine superstitious belief in the state can mistake the destruction of the bourgeois state machine for the destruction of centralism. But if the proletariat and the poorest peasantry take state power into their own hands, organize themselves quite freely in communes, and unite the action of all the communes in striking at capital, in crushing the resistance of the capitalists, and in transferring the privately owned railways, factories, land, and so forth to the entire nation, to the whole of society, will that not be centralism? Will that not be the most consistent democratic centralism, and proletarian centralism at that? Bernstein simply cannot conceive the possibility of voluntary centralism, of the voluntary amalgamation of the communes into a nation, of the voluntary fusion of the proletarian communes for the purpose of destroying bourgeois rule and bourgeois state machine. Like all Philistines, Bernstein can imagine centralism only as something from above to be imposed and maintained solely by the bureaucracy and the military clique. Marx, as though foreseeing the possibility of his views being distorted, purposefully emphasized the fact that the charge that the commune wanted to destroy the unity of the nation, to abolish the central authority, was a deliberate fake. Marx purposefully used the words, "The unity of the nation was to be organized so as to oppose conscious democratic proletarian centralism to bourgeois military bureaucratic centralism." But there are none so deaf as those who will not hear. And the very thing the opportunists of present-day social democracy do not want to hear about is the destruction of the state power, the amputation of the parasitic excrescence. Section 3. Abolition of the parasite state. We have already quoted Marx's utterances on this subject, and we must now supplement them. Quote, "It is generally the fate of completely new historical creations," he wrote, "to be mistaken for the counterpart of older and even defunct forms of social life, to which they may bear a certain likeness. Thus, this new commune, which breaks the modern state power, has been mistaken for a reproduction of the medieval communes, for a federation of small states, Montesquieu and Girondins, for an exaggerated form of the ancient struggle over over-centralization. The communal constitution would have restored to the social body all the forces hitherto absorbed by the state parasite feeding upon and clogging the free movement of society. By this one act it would have initiated the regeneration of France. The communal constitution brought the rural producers under the intellectual lead of the central towns of their districts, and there secured to them, in the working men, the natural trustees of their interest. The very existence of the commune involved, as a matter of course, local municipal liberty, but no longer as a check upon the now superseded state power." End quote. Breaking of the state power, which was a parasitic excrescence, its amputation, its smashing, the now superseded state power. These are the expressions Marx used in regard to the state when appraising and analyzing the experience of the commune. All this was written a little less than half a century ago, and now one has to engage in excavations, as it were, in order to bring undistorted Marxism to the knowledge of the masses. The conclusions drawn from the observation of the last great revolution, which Marx lived through, were forgotten just at the moment when the time for the next great proletarian revolutions had arrived. Quote, "The multiplicity of interpretations to which the commune has been subjected, and the multiplicity of interests which construed it in their favor, show that it was a thoroughly expansive political form, while all previous forms of government had been emphatically repressive. Its true secret was this: it was essentially a working class government, the produce of the struggle of the producing against the appropriating class, the political form at last discovered under which to work out the economic emancipation of labor. Except on this last condition, the communal constitution would have been an impossibility and a delusion. End quote. The utopians busied themselves with discovering political forms under which socialist transformation of society was to take place. The anarchists waived the question of political forms altogether. The opportunists of present-day social democracy accepted the bourgeois political forms of the parliamentary democratic state as a limit which should not be overstepped. They battered their foreheads praying before this model and denounced as anarchism all desire to smash these forms. Marx deduced from the whole history of socialism and of the political struggle that the state was bound to disappear, and that the transitional form of its disappearance, the transition from state to non-state, would be the proletariat organized as the ruling class. But Marx did not set out to discover the political forms of this future stage. He limited himself to precisely observing French history, to analyzing it, and to drawing the conclusions to which the year 1851 had led, viz., that matters were moving towards the smashing of the bourgeois state machine. And when the mass revolutionary movement of the proletariat burst forth, Marx, in spite of the failure of that movement, in spite of its short life and its patent weakness, began to study what forms it had discovered. The commune is the form at last discovered by the proletarian revolution under which the economic emancipation of labor can take place. The commune is the first attempt of a proletarian revolution to smash the bourgeois state machine, and it is the political form at last discovered by which the smashed state machine can and must be replaced. We shall see further on that the Russian revolutions of 1905 and 1917, in different circumstances and under different conditions, continue the work of the commune and confirm the historical analysis given by Marx, that product of his genius. Finishing. Page 66.